Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Adefemi, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Good morning, Fabi.
All right, let me tell you about what's happening around the world. Now, Israel's military says it has attacked military targets belonging to Houthi fighters in Yemen, including strikes on ports and 2 central power plants in Yemen's capital, Sana'a. Israel says this is in response to the group firing a missile towards Israel, which was intercepted. Now, the strikes further escalate Israel's campaign against the Iranian-backed Houthis, who have so far avoided the same level of intense military strikes that have targeted what we're seeing in Palestine with Hamas, as well as Lebanon's Hezbollah. Now, despite this, the latest bout of strikes by Israel on Yemen risk further escalating conflict with the Houthis, whose attacks on the Red Sea corridor have drastically impacted global shipping. And to the United States now, where a 60-year-old Chen Jinping, who is a Chinese-American based in New York, has pleaded guilty to conspiring to act as an agent of the government of the People's Republic of China in connection with opening and operating an overseas police station for China's Ministry of Public Security. For acting as an illegal agent, Chen faces 5 years in prison when he is sentenced next year. There is also a co-defendant who has pleaded not guilty. Now, the rest came after the Justice Department charged more than half a dozen people in 2020 with working on behalf of the Chinese government. And let us also not forget that back in September of this year, the US did charge Linda Sun, a former aide of New York's governor, Kathy Hochul, with secretly acting as an agent of the Chinese government. I mean, from the United Kingdom to the United States, we are talking so much about, Chinese so-called spies being able to intercept different factions, but opening and operating a police station in Manhattan. Goodness gracious me.
I mean, when you look at the ecosystem, definitely you're not surprised. I mean, these people have been there for a while, and they were able to fiddle their way through as regards what was happening in Manhattan and know things for themselves. But it's also a big indictment on Homeland Security. And that's why when you look at people that Trump had put in there, then you should look with a second eye, because a lot of people are now saying that we're not really sure of the kind of capacity they have. Right. The likes of Tulsi Gabbard of this world and a couple of other people there. I mean, look at the chap he's put in FBI, and you're looking and saying, what will befall America?
Exactly.
But only time will tell. As regards the Houthi rebels, the activities have been going on there for a while. They also had been fighting back after Israel invaded Gaza, and they had been fighting, trying to disrupt that international shipping channel line, and making their own incursions in that area. But this time around, Israel is trying to attack them back as much as possible, to be able to bring some stability to them. But it just shows that the Middle East conflict will never go away at this point in time.
Let's not say never.
No, it's not going to go away, because you have a West that is backing up Israel, that is giving Israel the nerve to be able to do all of this. If Israel doesn't get the backing of the West, they will not continue all of this.
Agreed.
And that's why they have tried as much as possible to continue all of this.
Thanks, Rufai.
All right, so let me talk about the Chinese guys in New York. So it was almost as if they were operating a mini consulate in the middle of Manhattan, Chinatown, actually. And what they were doing beyond, when you say police station, but they were doing other things, including renewing, driver's license for Chinese people living in, maybe American Chinese people. Then they were also acting on behalf of the Chinese government to monitor some of their citizens, or people who at least dissidents or descendants from China,
yes,
and checking those who were pro-democracy and just profiling them. So they were acting on behalf of the Chinese government. What the American government has said is that this is a violation of their sovereignty. And of course, you can imagine that. The challenge with this is that it might then put a big focus or spotlight on local diaspora communities, right, whereby you begin to interrogate or really investigate the activities that happen in these communities, whether they are just, the government, their home government can use such communities to spy, to almost establish a mini-government, illegal mini-government in the States, which of course America is going to kick against completely. Chen has pleaded guilty, so next year, he'll be sentenced, so looking at up to a 5-year imprisonment sentence, while the other guy has pleaded not guilty, so he's going to go on to trial. But the thing is, then worsens tensions, relationships between the United States and China, and the talks around China just imposing and interfering, and the audacity for them to come on U.S. soil. But it's not the first time. They've done it before, and it possibly is not going to be the last time.
Right.
But again, it will be more eyes, and it validates Trump's rhetorics around migration.
China.
Okay, very quickly. Look, the FBI, when they filed the charges against Liu and Xi Jinping in 2023, April 2023, they said that this is a demonstration of the audacious activities of the Chinese on U.S. soil. I quote them correctly. And this is to be seen in the context of the competition between the United States and China in different areas, be it TikTok, or be it semiconductor, or the levies, tariffs that President Trump is talking about as one of the first things he will do against China. So all of this is within the conflict with China. Now the audacity is, people setting up in Chinatown, in the middle of Manhattan, a police station. The allegation by the prosecutors is that that police station was being used to target Chinese dissidents living in the United States, a case of transnational repression scheme, which the New York attorneys say they are opposed to. Now, Xi Jinping has pleaded guilty. He will be sentenced May 30, 2025.
Yes.
The other guy, Liu, is still awaiting trial.
Yes.
So that's the story. About the Houthi rebels, this is within the context, again, of the axis of resistance that Iran had created in that region.
Yes.
Hamas, Hezbollah, and also the Houthi rebels. The Houthi rebels, the main issue about them is that they say they are in solidarity with the other forces in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. They've been supporting since October 2023, the Palestinians.
Yes.
And that's why they've caused a lot of havoc along the Red Sea and along the Gulf of Aden. On this program earlier this year, we talked about how the cost of international trade, shipping, increased. And companies like Maersk had to reroute through the Cape of Cod in South Africa, increasing time, increasing costs, and all of that. Now Israel is taking advantage of the fall of Syria, if we may say so, to quickly address the possible aggression from Iran through the Houthi rebels. Now the Houthi rebels, are now, having difficulties in Sana'a and in the port city, getting, supplies from Iran. Yeah. So, and Israel is not pretending about it. Israel makes it clear, this is enemy number one, enemy number two, and Syria is even more than number one. Syria having not recognized Israel since its founding in 1948.
Correct. Thank you very, very much. Always love talking international news with you all. But let's move on to our newspaper headlines from across the globe. And of course, we begin here in Nigeria. And there is really no prize for guessing what is on the front pages of Nigerian papers this morning. Budget, budget, budget. This day's headline reads, targeting inflation at 15%. President Tinubu presents a 49.7 trillion naira 2025 budget proposal. The government has allocated 4.9 trillion naira to defense and security spending and 406 trillion naira for infrastructure. Also on the top of this day is news of an unprecedented move by the Dangote Petroleum Refinery, which has announced a further reduction of the price of diesel from 1,200 to 1,000 naira per litre. While rolling out the products, the refinery supplied at a substantially reduced price of 1,200 naira per litre 3 weeks ago, representing over 30% a reduction of that amount on the previous market price of about 1,600 naira. So clearly you're seeing the Dangote refinery put consumers and the Nigerian people first. Staying now, or rather returning to our budget discussions, The Guardian, The Daily Independent, and The New Telegraph all focus on the budget with varying headlines from which sectors get the lion's share of budget, being education, defense, infrastructure, as well, of course, debt servicing, which constitutes 15.8 trillion naira. Now, both the Daily Trust and The Punch focused their headlines this morning after dozens of children are feared dead after a stampede in Ibadan. Organizers have been arrested after accusations of poor planning and criminal negligence. The parents of the affected children, they're more than 32, or at least 32 at this moment, are demanding the release of their bodies. Now, this tragedy took place at the Islamic High School in Bashan, and Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has promised justice. Just a terrible story there. To papers from the continent now, and Ghana's Daily Graphic leads with this controversial so-called anti-gay bill. Now, Ghana's Supreme Court had unanimously decided to dismiss 2 legal challenges to this new anti-LGBT legislation that has been criticized by many rights groups. Now, if you remember, earlier this year, lawmakers in Ghana passed a bill imposing 3 years in prison for people identifying as LGBT and 5 years for forming or funding LGBT groups. The bill is considered one of Africa's most draconian anti-LGBT laws and has been condemned by the United Nations. Onwards to the United Kingdom, and this morning's Daily Express shows Prince Andrew's Christmas calendar continues to open up, as now it's being reported that he will not join any royal family Christmas events today, including the family lunch. And finally, to the bottom of the UK's Daily Telegraph, we do have news that Sir Keir Starmer, his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, held secret talks with Donald Trump's senior White House officials, including Susie Wiley, who we know will be his chief of staff. She had those secret talks last month in Florida. Perhaps even when we were at Mar-a-Lago, she might have been there, allegedly so. And everyone was there, so it does suggest that the UK is clearly eager to build bridges with this incoming US administration. I don't know what had to happen in secret, though, but hey.
I mean, also speaking about that, I'm also seeing a wave, I want to talk about, as regards, building relationships, a wave of this right-wing nationalism now sipping into the UK. There's been talk about Nigel Farage trying to court Elon Musk to give them some money for reform. I and I were just talking about reform yesterday. This is their first election. They had about 4 million votes in the first election. And it shows that reform will do very well. Hence all the noise and trying to be very nationalistic Ken Badenoch is doing, because our real opposition is not really Labour.
It's
our
actually
real
the Reform Party. Absolutely.
So that's why she's playing to the right-wing nationalities.
Agreed.
As regards to Stampede in Ibadan, we would like to see proper investigation on that Stampede. It's very sad.
Yes.
No matter high up there the person is, it's very sad. And for the radio station too that was also involved, that came out and said, oh, we're just media partners. It also has to be said that media house also should be careful kind of event you are being a media partner to. Because once it solves your name forever. In a very small place like that, you say 5,000 people is going to come in there. What's the logistic? What's the security on ground? What's the exit channel? No. I mean, there are many questions. People should not just die needlessly, but it's also an indication of the poverty in Nigeria as we speak today. People are hungry.
Right, let me start with that, because that's such a tragedy, especially in December when people ought to be in a festive mood. Yes. And this was a Christmas, December outreach, end-of-year outreach by, as was stated in that report, the former Olori of the Oni of Ife, Olori Naomi Shilekonla. And with the best of intentions, when you want to do something good, if it's not well planned, this is what can happen. And this is not the first time we've seen in Nigeria where a lack of processes, health and safety, crowd control put in place when you want to do an outreach like this, it can turn something that ought to have been a good gesture into a complete disaster. Dozens of children whose lives have been lost as a result of sheer negligence, if we call it what it is. And wherever you are in other parts of the world, without, even if you say, oh, but I was trying to help, but if you don't put the processes in place and it leads to loss of lives, unfortunately, you are culpable. Absolutely. The governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, has responded very swiftly to this and said he's instituting an investigation and that there will be arrests made. I hope this is followed through. You know why? Because we need to make examples of certain situations and people to prevent such an incident from happening. It'd be great to know what the state's policy on gathering of large crowds is. It would be great to know if there were any permits required and if they obtained those permits. It would be great to understand what the crowd control exit points, entry points were. It would be great to understand if there was a plan to mitigate where there was overcrowding, because we understand the level of poverty in Nigeria. And how a lot of people, when you hear, and then there was massive press for it. So when you knew that there might be a potential number of people reaching, then you should have made plans for it. Going on the air afterwards to say, oh, please don't come again, we reach capacity, does not do anything. People are hungry. They just want help. So it's quite sad to see. Now on Prince Andrew, and I'll end here. Prince Andrew, you know, when his mom was alive, people often said she shielded him.
That he was her favorite.
Yes, she shielded him a lot. Now that she's no longer there and his brother is in charge, it looks like he's going to be facing a lot of the consequences of his actions, which he was shielded from, you know, while his mom was alive. So just to see that he's not going to be part of the family's Christmas lunch is quite sad.
Okay, the story from Ibadan, Oyo State, the wake-up call that it represents is that this Christmas is a festive season. People are going to be organizing a lot of events, and there will be a crowd, and the possibility of a stampede cannot be ruled out. In a situation whereby events in Nigeria are held without proper attention to security arrangements, to safety arrangements, and also in locations that do not follow the National Building Code. The National Building Code, for example, does not recommend that the exit point should be only one point. It should be several points. How many buildings in Nigeria follow that National Building Code? In other words, it's not a new story. It's a familiar story. It's something that had happened in the past before now. And why I say it's a wake-up call is that so that we don't have a repeat of the incident, because many more events will be organized in this environment. And there should be proper investigation into the circumstances surrounding the stampede and the death of innocent children just trying to have fun at a carnival at Christmas time. I think it's a tragedy, and we commiserate with the families of all the persons who were injured or who died. 32 of them we were told died in that particular incident. There is a story you brought up about the Dangote refinery, the benevolence of Alhaji Aliko Dangote at Christmas. This is the second time that he has been showing that benevolence. At first, we were told that Dangote refinery reduced the cost of PMS, pump price of PMS, by 20 naira. And now we're told that he has also been magnanimous enough to say that for this Christmas season, people can now buy diesel at 1,000 naira. This is the kind of public spiritedness that we recommend, the kind of, human touch that we recommend. And I'd like to commend Alhaji Aliko Dangote and his team at the Dangote refinery for seeing that, look, this thing we could talk about corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
Many years ago, I was one of the editors of a book on CSR, and our book was based on research. And our point is that, business, you have a conscience. And we like to see again and again, businesses having conscience. So that's that about, the Dangote refinery. Yes. In England, I think in Britain, the big issue really is about foreign influence in electoral process. Now, the Reform Party, Nigel Farage and the main campaigner in that party met at the Palm Beach Club at Mar-a-Lago, Florida, with Elon Musk, where he purportedly promised that he will give them about $10 million to support it. He was telling the businessman of the Reform Party. And now that has caused a lot of reaction in Britain, with the Conservatives now also sending through Andrew Griffiths, saying, no, look at us. We are a party of low taxes. We are also an anti-woke party.
Yes.
So the Conservative
with
Party...
With a black leader, a black female leader, nevertheless.
Andrew Griffiths, one of the senior leaders of the Conservative Party, is saying, please, Elon Musk, look in our direction.
Absolutely.
However, the Electoral Commission in the UK, first time I will hear his name, is Ranganjalan. You don't even know who the chairman of the election watchdog is in the UK. But here in Nigeria, they are always everywhere, in Africa rather, But the man says no. Government now has to take a second look at the guidelines for election financing.
Yes.
So that, foreigners don't come and take over the electoral process in Britain. And that's the big story, and we hear that Keir Starmer is favorably disposed to it, where he should be. If a Reform Party is going to Elon Musk, if a Conservative Party is saying Elon Musk could look in our direction. Now, how about the integrity of the electoral process, in the United Kingdom? So those are the issues that I see. But I like the fact that diesel will be cheaper this time. I hope that the supply will be seamless and we can, stock up,
Yes.
before the benevolence period expires. But thank you, Alhaji Aliko Dangote.
A huge thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Adefemi, for being with us this morning. Always great to have you just review world news and, of course, news super stories around the world.